y'all doing right now? Hello. So, I think I saw in like the Discord that Midori Sushi has to. It's like 10 p.m. over there for you, so I guess I'll start with you first, so you can see your thing first before you like fall asleep or anything. But just seeing if there's gonna be more people popping in, so we can maximize our juicy critique session. How's the volume for you guys? I don't know how loud my mic is right now, because when I was recording, my mic was kind of soft, but hopefully it's doing okay right now. Yes? Sure. There we go. How's that? How's that? Mic is a little soft. All right. I guess I will find a block to hold up my mic. I don't know. Is that better? Okay, that's good. Ooh. That good? Too loud? Oh, sorry. All right, I'm checking. Okay, it's in the yellow zone, so I'll consider that as good. Oops. Okay, that should be this should be good. Okay. All right, so we're gonna start out with Midori's first, and I know you had concerns about like how to make sure that your practice sessions are effective, and so what you really want to do whenever you're like trying to practice how to sketch or portraits, you want to think about what's your goal for the session. If you're aiming for stylization, then obviously you might not want to worry too much about getting the features too perfectly, like not going for how similar or like getting the right proportions. But if you're going for like realism and trying to get it right down to the T, then obviously you're going to want to actually understand how to use angles. And so you said you really liked the first one, but then you were like not feeling that hot with the second one and the third one. And so one of the things is when you're looking at a portrait, an easy way to do it is turn all of these. Let me cut these. We're just going to, let me make the duplicate. I'm just going to turn off the music. I cannot multitask for shit. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that baby into black and white. Because when you're just sketching, there's honestly no reason you need to have it in color. And it'll honestly help you a lot with like figuring out the proportions and like, the proportions and the angles and the lighting. And so when you're trying to figure out how to draw a face, first things first, I always do, is because I am not top tier level, like I can automatically draw a face without using any guidelines. So the main guidelines that I typically use is do that oval. Center line is where the middle of your face is, and then I like to draw the line for the eye and see where it lines up with the ears. The nose, see where it lines up with the ears and the mouth. And then you could use these kind of guidelines to measure the distance of. And if you're able to like measure distance, it's a very quantitative approach to drawing rather than like by feel. And usually as you get better and better with drawing, then you can go more by feel. But in the early stages, you're going to want to try to get as much as analytical, as data-based kind of measuring system as you can to get your drawing as solid as possible. And so you're going to notice that her eyes, tilt ever so slightly like this way, because her face is sort of like on an angle, so everything is tilting sort of that way. And so what you're noticing that in your drawing is lacking is like it could be tilted a little higher. You need that middle line. And some other guidelines you might want to consider is like the angle of the jaw when you're measuring, distance of the forehead, where does the eyebrow line up with the eye, where does the eye inner corner line up with the nose, that kind of thing, usually when you're trying to learn how to draw like realistically. And so let's see if we can pop this baby into Liquify to see if we can fix some of the proportions. And you're gonna notice that her nose bridge right here is actually a lot thinner than the way you drew it. And so that's another thing you can pay attention to when you're doing this stuff. It's like zoom out and then look at the picture as a whole. And if you're trying to stylize, obviously you are not going to worry too much about like whether it's going to look exactly like the picture. Instead, you're going to look for the essence. Like her nose has this really nice curve, and I think Sam Does Arts does great way of simplification. Is like he analyzes the features and then he figures out what like how much you can push it before it doesn't look like a face anymore. So you push that in because she does have sort of like a flatter nose bridge, and then she has like a slight button nose. And already her features are looking a lot closer, right? And so the thing with lips is when you're sketching lips, I find that it doesn't look very good when you just do lips like this, because it feels like it's sticking out more than it actually is, because the lip itself is very organic. So let me pull up this portrait studio that I've mentioned, and you'll see that the lips are connected to like the face, right? And so like there's no distinct line. So when you're sketching, if you do a distinct line, it breaks the realism of the face and it makes it look a lot more cartoony. So if you're not going for that cartoony look, I would highly recommend when you're drawing lips to instead just focus on like where your two upper lip and lower lip meet. So instead, maybe I would do cover that up. And instead, maybe I would just focus on her lip line and then just do the parts where you might have some shadow. Right, and already your lip looks a lot more natural and like seamless into your sketch, right? And so if you wanted to do more stylized, some ways that I might stylize it is I start again with like just a general shape of the face. Get your angle line. There, okay, get your angle line like that. Match that. Center line. Figure out the angle of the eyebrows. And you'll notice that the difference between your picture, your sketch, and her face is that her face is a lot longer, and the distance between her eyes and her nose is like longer in a sense. And so that's why, even though it's like a really good, like if you just wanted to practice lighting and stuff, then it's a great sketch. But if you're trying to get realism, you're gonna need to make sure that you keep that distance. And another tip I can give you for when you're practicing your sketches is sometimes flip the canvas and just do it the opposite way. So like it forces you to think about it in a different sense, or maybe even if you're actually just painting instead of sketching, rotate that baby, and so you are only looking at that picture in terms of shapes, and you're not looking at features. Like this right here is a shape. This right here is a shape, right? Shapes. So you're no longer looking at the portrait as like, oh, this is an eye, this is a nose, this is where my nose should be, because you have a lot of inherent biases. Like you might naturally be inclined to like put your nose like slightly lower than normal, like average face. And so if you're looking at shapes, you are more likely to be able to capture a likeness, because you are, I mean, it's like not too hard for anyone to just like paint a triangle or like paint a blob, right? I typically like to just put in the nose first, so I have a lot of reference points, and then a general line for the lip. And the way I like to measure is distance from the eye to the eyebrow. That's what I use as reference. So I'm just gonna quickly block in the lighting just as like a general sense, because sometimes if you're just practicing, maybe you don't really want to render the whole face out and you're just going to focus on the shape and lighting. And we're going to take our own tips about likeness, flip this canvas upside down, and I'm gonna merge these two layers, layer via cut. Do myself a hot favor, merge that down, and we're gonna actually start painting more like a painter rather than like a sketcher. Just block in that hair real quick, doesn't matter too much. Our goal ain't the hair. And right here, what I'm doing is like, I'm just painting really roughly. I'm not worrying too much about the lines that I've sketched before. Flip back over. Oops. Wrong brush. The way I usually paint lips is I use soft brush because the lip is a round kind of shape, and so it's later on after like you've done the basic like roundness of the lip, then you can come back in with like a eraser or like a harder brush to carve out some of those edges. And make sure to break up the chunk of that bang because your bangs are not that blunt. I don't know anyone who actually has bucket helmet hair. Hello. Different drawing brushes. Yeah. So I also have this like sort of pencil-y kind of brush, and so sometimes if you like wanted to get that kind of look, I feel like the pencil-y brush is really great for like just pure line sketching and like hash marks, kind of like this. Whereas if you're trying to paint like smoothly like this, then you're gonna want to use a more painterly brush, like an oil brush or a watercolor brush, that kind of thing. So like if I were to say mimic that, then you're gonna get a whole different vibe. This is too big, too small. There we go. Right, then you're gonna instead focus more on like the feeling of the line work rather than the shading of it. I follow this artist. Let me see if I can find his name, but he does a lot of like Procreate art where he has very textured brushes. Okay, let me drop his name in the chat. But he does these really great, like, very traditional looking like type of art where he uses Procreate brushes like the pencil or the watercolor kind of brush and to create the artwork that he does. And so like with these brushes, this pencil brush, yeah, of course I would just like focus on like hatch marks, basic general sketching, that kind of stuff. And so hopefully those tips were helpful for like figuring out how to approach your studying. But I think that's it for Misu today. And then so I will move on to Geekacorn. And so they mentioned they wanted me to help them fix their male anatomy. And what better way than to use good old references? And so let's see, where's my reference? There we go. All right, so this is like a very generic male model that Portrait Studio has. I pulled it up just because I wanted to get like a better sense of how the light would work for this scenario, this scene. If for first things that we're going to work on is that as much as we love juicy muscles, we gotta get the anatomy right. So I'm gonna bust out a red color and then show you just where the anatomy is kind of lacking a little bit. So first, when we draw abs, we don't want to draw it like actual hot cross buns because it makes it look a little bit too raised and it looks like not connected to the body, right? So when you're drawing abs, what you see here is like even though this guy's pretty toned, he literally, like, the only lines that you see is basically only from the midsection where the belly button meets. And so when you're doing abs, I would say you're gonna want to axe this part first. And there's usually this muscle that connects right here. You see the rib cage right here. Yeah, no, of course, obviously. So muscle here, so get that line of action, I think was mentioned in the Discord also. Get that line of action. So the spine here is curved like this. Whenever I draw torsos, I draw like a very generic rib cage to give myself like a good guideline for where I should place body, place the hips, place the arms. And since we want this to be a dynamic pose, shoulders are leaning this way, hips gotta be leaning this way. And that's a theory that the Greeks came up with, where they make contrapposto, I believe it's the technique is called, where the hips and shoulders don't line up perfectly and it creates a more dynamic, more interesting pose to look for. And so drop that hip right here. And we want our guys to have leg day, not skinny baguette thighs. We want meaty drumsticks, right? So and so these eyes here, I feel like would be better if it sat higher up so it looks more natural that your eyes are like your head's sort of tilted up as you're leaning rather than like looking down, because then your neck wouldn't really show as much. And the arms gotta tuck this way rather than when you're looking at it from this, this part of the arms gotta tuck out more than your forearm. So here's your elbow, tucks out. Let's see that in action. So it would look something like this, the pose, right? So now we got a general pose. I am going to do a quick paint over. Which gender I find more difficult to draw? So I started out drawing females a lot as a kid, like when I was younger. And honestly, I feel like females are the fastest to pick up just because the features are softer and typically they don't have as many muscles to showcase when you're first learning to draw it. Because if you're learning to draw male, their features tend to aim towards more angular and more muscly. And so if you're just a beginner, it's a bit rough on you to try to have to learn anatomy and general just poses and like how to just draw a human in general. And so if you're a beginner, I just suggest that you try to stick with one gender first before learning the other. And females tend to be a little easier because it's like you can get these really beautiful like swoopy curves, that kind of thing, right? So like, woo. Whereas men, you're gonna want to aim for more angular dynamic poses. Not that to say that there aren't like softer looking males, that kind of thing. All right. And as for lighting for this, for the overall color palette situation, I would say since your character is like more tan skinned, the room would be best not to be that color. So I'm going to try to do some color adjustments just because if you want your character to pop out a little bit more, you're gonna want the room to be like a slightly different color. Like you don't even have to pitch it too much. All right, just pitched it slightly more yellow. Ever so slightly, so it's like a different tone. And you could break it up even more if you were to say, I don't know, add like some shrubbery right here, that touch of green. Just pretend I drew a bush, but that touch of green right here would be really helpful to sort of break up that emptiness in the room and like add just like a tad bit of color to the piece. You could even like add a bit of interest with that lighting situation, right? Like parts of the plant could peek out into the actual light. And then you'd end up with a really interesting thing. I would also say the window, maybe I guess I'm like a little bit confused by how you want the guy to stand because I feel like you maybe want to actually expand the size of this window just a tad bit. Let's see if I can do that. Edit perspective. Ah, shoot. Need to not grab the guy. There we go. All right, so pretend this is perfect, but it is rough trying to get this window to work with me right now. Eh. we'll just call that a good enough window. But yeah, I think it would work a lot better if you were to say you expanded that window space so the figure becomes a lot more shaded in the darkness rather than I'm bothered. It's more shaded in the darkness, and then you have that nice contrast of the light kind of shining in there. Because before, your window was just like the line was cutting into the arm, and that's typically something we want to avoid because we rather have intersecting, not tangential lines to look more appealing to the viewer's eyes. And I mean, like if you have tangential lines, it all honestly often feels very crowded, like you didn't give yourself enough space, or like you just, let me show you, like if you this versus say like this, oops, I did not make a new layer. This kind of tangential line is what I mean is a big no-no. You rather have it intersect just a tad bit, right? So your eyes don't feel like it's crowded, like what the heck's going on here? Something a little bit better. So I'm gonna repaint this, give myself better lighting. So first things first, when we're doing these types of pieces is we lay down a general lighting. So I want to make sure that I capture this beauticious light right here. And I will say also for male nipples, they're not as centered as you would think. So for males, their nipples tend to be a little more off-center, closer to the sides of their breasts, rather than like females where it's more centered. So that's why it's looking a little bit odd. And I'm also going to change that lighting to be a little bit more yellowish, so you get that nice contrast. So if you have lighting from the window, there should be no reason that you have so much shadow on that arm like you did before. Like, I know you want to sculpt out the arm, but shadow isn't the only way to do it. You can also do it through light. So I'm just going to get rid of this. I know we love shiny, shiny muscles, but there's a way to properly do it. So again, with that gorgeous lighting, change that a little bit. And one thing I'm gonna know is that if this side of the face is in shadow, why is the eyes still so freaking white? There's no reason that that white should be that bright. It has no business. So I'm gonna take a color from the background. So you'll see that the eyeballs aren't white. There is some color, especially if it's in the shadow. The hair, it's important, very, very importante, very important that we get a general lighting shape rather than trying to go in with these individual highlights. I'm just going to get rid of that window line because it's making my life miserable right now. Okay, do that for now. And then you can just add back your windows. Something like that. I don't know. It'd probably be a different hue because it does get some of that light. Maybe it'd be lighter, but for now it's just a placeholder. Placeholder alert. All right. Pretend that's a good window, but right now I'm just trying to get your anatomy fixed as of the moment. And so you shall see that in this reference image, you got that shadow curving in there. And I like to use the lasso tool religiously because it is really, really good for getting clean ass lines. Especially for like the beginning stages of laying down like muscle, I try not to go too much with that soft brush just yet, because you're laying down basic form and shape rather than trying to get that beautiful muscle. So we're just going to pretend that is all covered up. And you got to be careful with like male hips because they tend to sit lower than female hips, and so when you do like poses like that, it can run into a risky situation of being too curvy and looking more feminine than male. Alright, give myself my guidelines again because I can't see shit. So the way I typically find learning anatomy to be interesting is that you want to find poses that are like not so conventional. Like maybe there's like a lot of sites out there, I think. I'll link some sites for like really quick pose practices, but like the goal is to just force yourself to really like find poses that are more engaging, like stuff that you would actually see in real life. Like maybe they're kneeling down, or they're twisting their back, or they're like arching over something, or like they're fighting, and that really helps make it more engaging to draw. Like there's so many people out there, I think on DeviantArt or whatever, where they have like pose libraries where they have references of people fighting, people like falling, dancing. I typically like to practice my pose and anatomy by sketching athletes, dancers, what else? Sometimes even like cartoon characters, that kind of thing. And so the important thing about learning anatomy is like find a way to make it interesting to you, right? So it's like I feel like as you figure out a workflow for I usually try to go for quick sketches, and then quick sketches like 30 seconds each, and then maybe 1 minute, and then maybe 5 minutes, and 10 minutes, and that really forces you to think about like focus on like one particular part of the anatomy that you're trying to study. For 30 seconds, maybe you're just focusing on figuring out how to capture the action of the person. For maybe 1 minute, you're a little faster. You could get in like maybe the main torso, that line of action, obviously, and then maybe like the general head. So like you can be a lot faster, but you're getting closer and closer to like working your way up into like a full-on sketch. 10 minutes, maybe you're more focusing on like, okay, you captured the line of action, but now you're adding in some of the muscles, some of the hands, but still obviously you are not focusing on like the facial features or like the individual fingers, feet, that kind of thing. So it's only until you get like to 20 minutes that maybe then you're starting to do a lot of more shading. I feel like by the time you're doing like 10-minute sketches, you can add in like major lighting situations, but you're still not focusing too much on individual like muscles, but maybe you're doing something like I am where you're getting the big shapes of the figure. So let's see. And I feel like having hot, sexy people pose for you helps a lot in keeping your motivation. So if you have any Insta models that you like, save some of those pics. Save some of those spicy, spicy shirtless pics for guys, and then spicy bathing suit model pics, keeps that interest up. And as your arm is raised up, here you have your deltoid right here. And then it's going to be overlapped. And this is where like so anatomy wise, this took me a long time to figure out, but apparently, so your deltoid is connected to your pecs. So when you raise your deltoid, yes, spicy pics, perfect. Honestly. I feel like I learned a lot about male anatomy by looking at like male celebrity shirtless pics, male models, athletes, that kind of thing, to learn about like general anatomy, like really, really basic, real super, super basic. Like this is where the muscle exists, and this is how it acts when you do it in a certain pose. Because honestly, there are a lot of exceptions in like my live drawing studio sessions when I was in college. We obviously don't have like celebrity model bodies, right? So it's gonna be like very average, normal human bodies, and so you're gonna see that the male, the things that we consider as like the generic male body is actually like much more nuanced. Like you're not going to see all the abs, you're not going to get the 11 line, you're not going to get that hip to hip bone popping out all the time. In actuality, real bodies are a lot more fluffy and marshmallowy, right? And so the deltoid right here, deltoid, and it folds in, and then your pecs are actually going to be raised up. Disappointed? Stop, don't call me out. No. These are good questions, honestly. I feel like people need to know about this. Like, how do you study anatomy? It's like you look at hot people and then you move away from that. pecs are going to be raised up and it's going to push inwards on the other pecs. McDonald's bodies, exactly. You know, do whatever makes you feel happy. I mean, there's a benefit to learning about all different types of body types. So, like, obviously, don't limit yourself to just drawing one type of body type. It's just it makes it easier to learn when the body type tends to be like leaner, so you can actually see the muscles. Because there's a place for every single body type in art, like normal people you can relate to. So, like, why wouldn't you also draw normal body types? And so because I'm leaning this way, the belly button's gotta sit right here. Tight. And then, so your armpits right here. Oh my god, I can't even see. I'm gonna lower the opacity of this. If you're muscular, you're going to get that. That triangle region where you're, don't know what that muscle is called, but like your the place where everyone massages because their shoulders hurt. That's the muscle that pops out. Oh, what if? Hey, now McDonald's bodies can be pretty cool to draw and shade. Like those stomach rolls, very juicy. Quick water break. Remember to drink water, y'all. So your deltoid. All right, let's see. Feel like we're gonna have to pop that baby out a little bit. And so it took me a little bit of a while to like learn how to use the program, but I feel like once you learn the program, it's very helpful for like a generic, like super generic pose, because this obviously isn't going to also encompass how real bodies are a lot smoother in their pose. Like, it doesn't show you how your arm skin would like bend in reality. It just gives you like the generic like lighting, which is helpful, but if for those situations, then you're gonna want to bust out your handy dandy phone and then take a picture for yourself. And then the thing about male faces, a lot more angular, a lot beefier. Let's see, how do they want Kikacorn? Alright, real quick, gonna bust out a mirror so I can see how that arm's supposed to look. Alright, so your elbow. Oh, shoot. Remember to label your layers, y'all. I don't label my layers, and so I get what I get, and I can't get upset. Alright, so shoulder, collarbone, right spicy here. Pectorals raised up. Your pecs have to match up with the bicep and the deltoid muscle area, and then right here is where your armpits would be, because if you feel your own armpit, it's like sitting right underneath that pectoral meets the deltoid kind of area. And so when you raise it up, this is where your armpit would be. And then I usually simplify my abs. Like, here's where your ribs are. There's actually like super nuanced pictures of how the muscles there would work. And so if you're actually trying to study on like the details of that, I would highly recommend just like looking up an anatomy picture. But for artists like us and for real bodies, they don't always show up, so you can just simplify it. So like even if you have an 8-pack, you would not draw it like hot cross buns, I'm sorry to say. So, and you usually want to shade it so the male nipples typically line up right around here instead of smack center, because it doesn't make sense, right? So see how just raising that arm changes how the pecs would work. All right, continuing on with the real quick paint over, because we got a lot of you. Oop, oop. Right here is where your beautiful triceps are, the place that everyone neglects. Every day is tricep day, y'all. Cannot forget it, or else you have super unbalanced arms. All right, let me hide that line. And that's so now you see like how I'm shading the abs. Because you're lit that way, you have very distinct sides, or like if you imagine the abs as like a 3D shape, like a cube or something, this is the side that would catch the light. And so when you're drawing abs, there's no need to do the whole popping out. Like, you can do it slightly, but the goal is to try to be as subtle as possible. Where's layers, right? So see. Oops. Whoa, that's a cool effect though. Never know what might happen when you experiment. I'll keep it. It's a plant. Line. Alright, so everyone remember blood is color. And again, be cautionary about how you render material, because when you render it like this, it reads very like a very shiny balloon type material rather than pants. It might be like, I know you want to create like, what is it called? Satin. I don't know what those materials called, like the really thin work pants, but even though those are slightly shiny, they still aren't, they're quite matte still, so you can't do too much of this crazy like highlight situation. Gotta be careful. And because you are bent on this hip, that means this side is going to be like, of the leg is going to be leaning up on the crotch area, so you're going to get like folds. Even though this is a relatively loose type of pants, you still gotta honor the system, honor the shading light situation. Cover that up. This part, maybe it catches a little bit of that light, but majority is going to be in darkness. I'm kind of bullshitting how this arm's supposed to look because I don't have a reference, but when you're actually doing this, please take some reference images so you can see how the arm actually looks when you put it into the pants. Close enough, I think, as long as we get that light. AI art. I think you have to be careful about how you're using it. Like, people who are claiming AI art is like the same as art, or like basically can replace artists, is so full of themselves. Like, the whole purpose of art back in the day is so back in the day, back in the ancient times, art was used as a method of like expressing mostly religious textures, and like it's usually commission based. But I feel like now like art has evolved more to become sort of like an identity of like who you are as a person, how you view the world. So like when AI artists kind of discredit like, or like just mimic another artist's like art and just call it like, oh, I can take over for your channels, like you're basically disqualifying or like discrediting everything the artist has come to be, like everything they have experienced, everything they've worked towards. They're just basically saying like a machine can do it, you're this. And I feel like that's so stupid. There's no place for that in the world. If you're using AI art instead as like a means of like inspiration, or like a way of like experimentation, then sure, I'll go for it, all for it. I would love to see more of that. But if you're saying you want to use AI art to replace artists nowadays, then you need to get the F out of here. Because artists work way too hard to do what they do than to have you come around and say like, I will be you, right? And yeah, I saw Sam's post about it and I thought it was just so ridiculous how people can just say like, oh yeah, I can be Sam does arts. Like, no, you gotta be careful about that. Like, even people who study his art like for themselves, like they do artist studies, you still have to be you have to make it clear like it's a study and you're not trying to take over, like infringe on his intellectual property. I feel like I'm taking too much time with this guy, but anatomy is so important, so fucking important. Okay, so render that. I use a lasso tool to carve out that shape, and then I bring in a soft brush to pop that muscle, to pop that beautiful muscle out. It's only now that I will allow you to use highlights, and it's ever so slight of a highlight, because his muscles are not covered in oil. As much as I hate to say it, he is not doused in baby oil, so his muscles should not be glistening like that. Yeah, honestly, it sucks that that might become the reality, which is why artists really got to band together, like saying, put their foot down, say like no, because as much as like I feel like you can train an AI to do something, I feel like you lose that kind of human touch, the kind of imperfections that showcase like what the artist is. And like, I don't know, it's I feel like maybe the only times like companies would do that is like for graphic design. It might be easier for them to transition into that, which would suck a lot for the industry. But if everyone could, the ideal situation would be that everyone thinks about the human side of this issue rather than the profit side, right? So if we all could agree that we don't want to be capitalist assholes, and we want to make sure everyone has a piece of bread for themselves and their families, then they would focus on like nurturing our humans to do the work, because humans are essentially what makes the world run, not machines. But that's an ideal situation. I'm not an expert on this topic, so I don't say I have like the full solution for how we're going to deal with this issue. But if everyone speaks up loud enough, maybe we can all tell them to go F themselves and we'll keep our jobs. Oops. Once again, I am in the wrong layer. Why do I do this to myself? Whatever. Put that down. Oop. Really? Okay, it doesn't like that. Side. No, it's fine. Yeah. Aw, thanks so much. Yeah, no, I love, like, I'm glad that you love my work so much. With the algorithm game being as disgusting as it is, you know, sometimes it does feel very disheartening. Especially when like there's a post that you thought would perform really well, but turns out it's like kind of just meh. But you know, just work on yourself, do what you can do, be the best human you can be, and I think that's like the most important thing, right? All right, I'll just clean up the line. Yeah, aw, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Gassing me up, y'all. All right, so that's like real basic fixes to the anatomy issue that we got going, and we're gonna make sure we give him some armpit hair, because reality, everyone has armpit hair. Did I get rid of that line slightly? I would say for this shadow, maybe instead it would be more like that. Oops. Rather than such a soft line, because I feel like a problem with your painting was that it's too many soft edges. Like, don't be afraid to have some hard edges, especially when you need it. All right, pretend. And then you'll just finish this off with like a yes, this will be uploaded to the Twitch videos section, and I'm also uploading it to my YouTube, so you can just come back and watch this in full glory. You can like pause it, see how I'm like zoning in on that smexy like muscle or that lighting situation, or if you want to, you know, go back and see me redo everything, like see the before and after, that's also fine. So the final section I highly recommend is my favorite. Okay, let me merge these. And my old PSD files. I was thinking once I organize everything, I'll probably like set up a Gumroad and like throw some of my old PSDs in there so people can buy them and learn how I draw. But I just want to make sure like I figure out a way so people aren't like going to infringe on my copyright. Like, I don't know if I should keep my tags in there or that kind of stuff. Oops. If this was raw straws, I would be using color dodge, but unfortunately I am not. I don't think this lighting situation requires a color dodge just yet, but let's see how it looks actually. If I were to do a color dodge with a red, doesn't look as good. Yeah, doesn't look as good. And then I just probably final touches, throw in a little bit of an interesting light, like just a tad of blue. Yeah, that's why I was like, I need to get it all set in order, like, so people can't do that. But even if they do, I don't know, I don't have a big legal team to sue people, so. But it's still, at least I can pretend, like, call people out on my Insta, be like, y'all, what are you doing? Like, I have had my art put onto NFTs without my permission. Like, I look at it, I'm like, I don't think I sleepwalked and turned into turned my art into an NFT, and I'm not earning none of the money from it, but sucks for them because I'm not that popular, so no one's gonna buy the NFT. Ha 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 ha. The 3D program that I am using is called Portrait Studio, and it is sold by this artist named Istabrak. Let me bust out her page right here for you. Portrait Studio. It's like this really cool 3D program that works for, I believe, Mac and Windows. And I really like it just because it allows you to do, there's also like a little tutorial for how to use it, but it really allows you to like mess with the lighting, say like I want softer light, stronger light, change the angles. I can do secondary points of light right here, move that around. I can change the color of that light, which is really cool for especially like non-conventional lighting situations. Like, let's see, let me pull up, as you can see, fuck Makima. So what I did here was I changed the background color, and then I had, where's my ambient light? Okay, I turned on ambient reflectivity and I chose the color, so like now like all of my figures get this really nice bounce light. And you can like put as many of these figures as you want, your models. You can add like basic shapes, complex. I think she also has a bit of models, like environment models, a couple of props, really generic if you're interested in using those, but that's why I like it. I bought it when it was like $80, so I now feel sad that it's now on sale for $60. So if you are interested, it is on sale. Go for it. No, at the moment, it felt good to buy it. So no regrets. Hashtag no regrets. Oh, good lord, 100 on Mac. Yeah, I feel like it's because the way they programmed it or like they made it, it's not very Mac friendly. But hey, you don't have to buy these types of 3D rendering programs in order to have good poses. All that matters is that you have yourself a camera and the dignity and willingness to take those photos yourself. And there's like plenty also of like resources out there that's like that has like different type of lighting situations. Like if you just type up like, sunset lighting or like fire flame in your hand lighting, like there's usually people who sell like pictures for like real cheap for that, or even for free. Like thank God for those people. But all right, so that's how I would fix it. Let's show you the before and after. It bothers me that this nose isn't lit correctly, but okay. I have to stop or I'm gonna run out of time. Before, after, right? So see the difference between the anatomy, and I mean, I could even add back some of that chest hair real quick. Let's find a good brush. No, that's not a good brush. Experimentation, y'all. This is not the brush either. I I swear I have a brush that's perfect for these situations. Well, worst comes to worst, you erase away. It's not the end of the world. Oops. Anyway, something like that. I don't know. Trying to make it more natural than before, but before, after, yeah. So, some changes I would make to your piece. Oh, yeah. So I have had ideas for YouTube videos, but being me, the procrastinator, I take forever. So I was gonna do a video on pretending to be like an AI machine and make art. But I have yet to film that. But hopefully I will do that sooner or later. But it does seem fun to do some of those art challenges. Let me save this image. Oops. All right, so for Greta. So Chainsaw Man, obviously. Huh? Spicy. So I know you said you wanted to be able to get more like this type of coloring style. And the way you do this is, if you look at what this artist does, let's zoom in on them. So this artist, the way they do it, they keep the palette relatively low contrast, right? And it's like pretty similar in the hue family. So they like to do cool lighting, warm. Thank you. No, gotta practice my video editing skills, you know. So they like to do a base sort of warm kind of color, like this. They choose that, and then they add in a bit of a more saturated warmth near where the darker shadows are. And then they try to break up that warmth by adding back like a cooler tone. So like maybe they take this color and then bust out an overlay or a soft light or a hard light, and then they sweep this on there and lower the translucency to get that nice balance between cool and warm. And so if you are trying to do that for your coloring, what we want to do is get that move some stuff around. What you're gonna want to do is get that warmth in there. So they choose, yeah, it helps. I hope that was helpful for like breaking down like how you're going to analyze what an artist does. I mean, they also have like different anatomy, like different stylization of the anatomy, like their characters, their male characters. So you know, it's fine. I'll work with what I got. It'll be real quick. It'll be okay. Like, we're not going to touch too much on the background. I feel like we're just going to talk about like how to get the, oh, yes. Critique of the session happened last month, but this is the second critique of the session, Century. So I guess you could say maybe it's the second critique of the first critique of the 2022. I don't know. I'm bullshitting here, but yeah, it should be fine. I can just work with what I got here. So what we're gonna do is we're going to add that really saturated warm color here. So I'm gonna choose a pretty warm color So when it mixes with that pink that you got there, it's gonna end up like sort of more red pink. Session of the month at least, okay? Chris session of the month. I mean, if anything, I really want to start streaming more, like when I'm just arting. But I have that pressure, man. My computer, can it handle it? Don't know. All right, we're going to make our lives easier. Just like that. Yeah, maybe we like it a little more orangey. So if you're ever struggling to figure out, all right, listen, if you're ever struggling how to color match, like how to get harmonious colors, I have discovered after watching some of Loisha's like shorts on IG and stuff, like she uses the hue and saturation tool from the image window like religiously, and I feel like it's such a smart ass move because I no longer have to like pull my color picker through the whole spectrum to try to figure it out. I can just like really quickly get like a general idea of like what type of hue I want it. Like, do I want it more purple? Do I want it more green? And then you can play with saturation, and that usually like makes my workflow a lot faster. All right, and so we're going to try to catch that contrast back in. Bust out the hard light, throw in sort of a cool light to break up that shape a little bit. Oh, maybe hard light ain't the best. Let's see how overlay looks. Overlay's okay. Not horrible. And then we're also going to balance that out with more of a desaturated kind of peach color. So you have a nice balance of cool and warm. So what I want to do with this is take that baby and adjust it so it's slightly more less pink and more like peach, and lower that saturation. See, like this only saturation that's happening is in the shadow, and everything else is relatively low saturation. And the way they color their shadows is like this part is basically just it looks pink, but if you look at it in context, it looks like tan, but in context to everything else, it's pink. So what we want to do here instead is lower that saturation. Because you see here, it's in the pink section, but it's hecka desaturated, like so desaturated. Like best ways to learn how they choose their colors, use your color picker, get their picture and seeing what they're choosing colors of, right? All these areas, desaturated, desaturated, desaturated. Only saturation is this spicy, spicy shadow right here. That's like meeting right at the throat. And that's where they want you to draw your attention towards. And so we gotta also see desaturated, desaturated. And we're also going to darken up that hair, because if you see in the reference, there's actually a lot more shadows because it's such high contrast. And I feel like you totally forgot. There is a shadow right here. If you zoom in ever so slightly, there is a shadow sitting right there, y'all. What happened to your shadow? Like, where's your shadow? Where's your shadow, girl? Where's your shadow, Greta? She just she just exists as a corporeal being. Oh yes, we can totally cover hair next month's tutorial as long as everyone votes for it. So time to pull up your campaigning game, Greta. Convince everyone. Rip that shadow. Yeah, what happened to the shadow? So we're just gonna throw that baby in there. Oops. Oh yes, label your layers. I am incompetent in that. One of these days I'm gonna realize that I have been painting on the wrong layer the whole freaking time. Just real quick do that. Yeah, like when I first started like drawing, I feel like hair was like the least on my priority list. Like first comes the eyes, then comes the lips, then the nose, then the hair. But the hair can really make or break your piece, and so we gotta address it, y'all. And I feel like the best way to really do hair is to think about it in shapes rather than like think about it like individual strands, like, oh, this is where the highlight belongs. So like you might see that there's like highlights here, slider, which is great, like you're identifying values, but you're gonna end up missing out on the overall shape of the hair because you're too focused on getting that light and dark. So you're gonna see that this portion of the hair sits there. This section of the hair is right in front. So here's the thing. For like detailed paint over critiques like this, I mostly only do it for my disciple tiers, which is about $10 a month USD. But for quick roast sessions, I do typically like to do YouTube videos for that. And so if you just tag me with the hashtag CinderLoveRoast2, then I will add you to the collection, and when I make the video, maybe you'll see your art in there, and you'll get the quickest, funniest, or not funny, I don't know, cringiest comment about your art. Maybe that's up your alley. Maybe you are a masochist and you love hearing people like destroy you. In which case, I will gladly exert the dominant energy you need. We'll just pretend that didn't exist. All right, so this section of the hair catches light, and then right under here, that other section requires it to be in darkness. It's the other side of the moon. Hey, now, you have to understand, if you are joining my critique sessions, you are getting in with the 200% package of my personality and art. Art is secondary at this point. And then highlights of the hair. Highly recommend you do not do highlights in individual strands. You're gonna run into trouble. It's better to usually to do it in chunks and then break up that chunk just a slight bit so it looks a lot more natural. And you'll see that this artist also like high saturation on that light area, so we are going to not be that bright, because even though it's like the light section, let's bust out the black and white. It's not actually that bright, right? Compared to like what you did. What you did is huge ass contrast, almost like she has white highlights like a e-girl, which if you're going for that, yeah, sure, fine. But if we're going for that, this is just a highlight of her base hair color, then we cannot allow this to happen. I cannot abide by this. So I'm just gonna darken up that baby a little bit. All right, you see the way her hair turns. As it turns, it's going to create a sort of fold. So you got to think about it. Okay, where is the dark shadow area that's getting cast, and then where's the light area? So when I'm painting, I feel like because I was trained classically, I tend to, when I'm painting, think more in like 3D forms. Like I feel like it helps me at least, because if you learn to paint more in 3D forms, you're able to paint in a lot more different lighting situations than just the situation you're presented in, right? So like if you understand, like if your hair folds like that, you're going to get a shadow. Then even if it's like, say, in a side angle, then you're still going to understand like, okay, the top part needs to be lit up, the bottom part needs to stay shaded. And so that gives you more versatility as an artiste. But obviously there is like, if you're starting out, it might be easier to just start learning 2D abstract shapes when you're studying, and then start afterwards learning like, okay, I have to understand how this works as a 3D form, right? Quick water break. I hope all of you are drinking some water. Ah, yes. Okay, continuing on. Highlights. Like you see how I'm just moving my cursor up in the value, not pushing in the saturation, but not desaturating it that much. And that's how you choose like really nice colors for your highlights typically. Okay, and then we're gonna make sure her body is and then she throws like another loop at you with her hair. Just when you thought it was done curving, it was like, psych, let's go for another round. All right, get rid of this. And so if you have this base shade, that means you're going to want to saturate the shadow and push it slightly to the warmer side. Oop. And it's just ever so slightly, ever so slightly. So even though we got that really bright camera flash, there's still a slight bit of shadow, just ever so slightly. And then we're going to make sure that we recapture some of this bright light that we lost because we were too focused on making sure that it was a cool color. I've warmed that up a little bit. So like for this shadow right here, again, we're going to bust out that saturation because it's so dark in value, right? And the artist here tends to, in the darkest areas, bust up the saturation. And then I'm gonna balance that piece out by adding desaturation. Alright, so if the camera's flashing forward, we're gonna have to make the forehead just a tad bit darker because it's not gonna catch as much light. And by doing that, you create more of like a dramatic, oops, slightly more dramatic, ever so slightly. I'm also darkening up your sleeve so you can really see those like highlights pop out. And again, ever so slightly. Let me lower that opacity. An extra thing about that background, this is metal, so you gotta capture that shininess, especially where that camera is flashing. Like that, okay? Don't neglect your metals. Don't neglect your backgrounds. And for the hair, you might just like come back in with like a couple of strands to break up the shape. Especially since there's that ugly ass shadow in the background, so you're gonna see double. And I would highly recommend to elevate this piece better, because you have just only the skin portion that's like the brightest section of the piece. Since you decided to have her dress so long, it doesn't break up the enough. So I feel like you would want to bring her legs back in so you get that nice sort of shape. Like, it doesn't have to be that much, it could just be a little bit. And that way you get a nice balance of light and dark. Making sure we get our shadows. And the way fingers work is that if you look at it from up front, your fingernails actually are curved like a moon like this. So you gotta reflect that kind of shape. Some real quick edits that can be done. Oops. Overlay. No, not overlay. What is it? Actually, that's just going to keep in the overlay. All right, so I always just play around with whether I want overlay or hard light or soft light, just because different lighting situations, sometimes the way you lay down the thing looks better with overlay, sometimes looks better with hard light. So just play around with that. real quick adjustments, lower that brightness there. You gotta make sure that when you are carving out light, that the area itself is dark enough that the light is actually going to show, or else it's going to end up looking kind of whack. I would say don't worry too much about the palm lines unless it's like a very distinct line like this part. If not, just focus more on like the general shadows. So push that into purples-ish kind of area. Same with this fingernail. Don't forget, your fingernails are curved, so we gotta do that. See? I would darken up that ribbon. Especially in like the darkest recess. Throw in a couple of strands of hair. I would also make sure your nostrils are dark enough because it is a pocket that is in your face, so it's gonna receive like pretty large recess. Well, mostly right now I make most of my money through commissions, but it's not enough, so I am job hunting. But you know, it's the goal, right? Alright, I'm not gonna neglect the sides of her nose. Make sure you bring back some of that spicy. Oh, nah, no worries. I mean, I don't feel like I hid when I graduated because I posted all on my story, but I graduated in June, so fresh grad. And honestly, I didn't even think Instagram could even be considered a way to get into the industry just because I started my Instagram like 2021 and I didn't really start posting till like the summer of 2021 when I was like my senior year and I was like, oh shit. And I'm sure no one here is going to be a stalker. Oh, you know, I should totally make one for her. She does seem really cool, right? So I'm just making your lips bigger just because lips, even if it's stylized, it looked a tad too small, right? So before, after, the lips look slightly better. I don't know, that's my personal opinion. If you choose to hate me and say like you ruined chains, you ruined the War Devil, come at me, bro. I'm just increasing the saturation as I get into the shadows. Since the light is so cool, that means the shadows aren't going to be saturated. And if you're gonna want that crazy, remember in my expressions video how having more whites in the eye can contribute to the crazy? So, obviously, we take what we learn and we apply it in our practice, right? So, voila, extra crazy. All right, there we go. So, yes, exactly. So you see someone who's like opening their eyes like two times a little bit too much, you back the F away from there. I'm teaching you how to spot the red flags in real life, y'all. If you ever end up on a date and they smile but their eyes aren't squinting, run. They aren't genuinely happy to see you. Okay, so before, all right, after, before, after. Exactly. You meet a hot guy on a date, be like, hey, you want to be my model for my drawing sessions? Like, you'd be so famous on my Insta for like 10 people. But if you think about it, like in reality, social media has like really distorted like what you consider as like fame. Because if we're thinking about like 200 people following you, imagine there's like 200 people in the room like actually watching you. Like, Jesus Christ. I'm gonna push some of those highlights even crazier into the weirder colors. Oh, I know, consistency, bro. If, also, if I figure out, well, you know what? I'm gonna dox my ugly ass bedroom, but let's see. Ugly ass bedroom. Perfect. Let me see if I can get the lighting better. Slightly better, but since my ugly ass bedroom, that's why I tend to not put my camera on. But we'll just throw ourselves real tiny right there. I know I perhaps I may have the personality for streaming. Do I have the skills and the technological acuity? That's the main question. And I gotta hold myself accountable to it too. Lol. But anyway, here you go. Wait, oh shoot. I totally forgot. This is what I was gonna do. I was gonna push the colors into weirder sections because the artists here, they tend to do real cool mix of cools and warms. So I'm gonna really, no, I don't want that color. Soft light? No. Okay, I guess I'm doing. We're going to make sure in the light section, we're gonna add some really saturated, like overlay kind of blues. And mix those with like your weird pinks. So like anytime you need to just do quick color fixes, your overlay, your hard light, soft light, your various layers are going to be your best friend for getting the perfect like quick, I'm super lazy but I still want like a cool effect kind of look. So like you see I'm getting like the real cool blues in there without having to actually like go back and repaint it. Super lazy, yeah. I'm lazy, I don't want to go back. See, look at that, beauticious blue, beauticious. And then throw in a bit of a purple in there so it breaks up that shape. All right, so we shall call that done for Greta. So once again, before, after. Once you just put in that shadow, I feel like the character got 20 times more realistic. That shadow was really doing you dirty, Greta. All right, so then we're gonna go to Jessie. So I know they had a different piece that they sent me. That one shadow, yeah, exactly. I know they said in the Google Drive they had a different piece, but they then posted this into the Discord, so I will be evaluating this one. So first things first, your head shape is a big no-no. All right, see you later, Greta. You shall see. You can watch the rest of the video over on my YouTube once I upload it. But major, yeah, you gotta lobby hard. I swear. Okay. So we're gonna show you how the head actually is angled. Yes, have a good dinner. Have a good dinner. It's nice afternoon for me right here. It's actually hot, even though it's November, because again, it is California, and California stays within the temperature of 70 to 100. Oh yeah, go to sleep, Midori, man. Or don't if you are. It's a Friday and you're like, F it. I do what I want because I'm an adult. But anyway, here you got the eye angle right actually, but one of the main issues you have here is that you don't overlap, or like you haven't observed enough of like faces that are turned way more 3/4, because you're used to 3/4 like this where you see a lot more of the eye, but when your face is like this, your eye is actually a lot more hidden and it's going to be a lot more tilted. So that's what we're going to try to fix here. So yeah, the eye would actually be hidden more like this. And the shape of the face typically when you see stylization, that's a good color. When you see stylization like this, the nose is always going to poke out further than the mouth. And you're going to want to think about it in terms of like sort of like a soda can. If you think like your soda can's like this, so you're going to have that, another soda can here. Right. And then you just erase away because you don't actually have a harsh edge for your jaw. This part, I just draw it in so you know like this is where your shadow. Any relevant art streamer? Nah, bro. I'm not actually I'm not in the industry that much yet, so gotta make some more mutes, meet some friends. Besides, I don't really follow too many art streamers. I feel like most streamers on Twitch, at least, are gamers, which, to be fair, Twitch was originally a gaming platform, right? So, and I feel like I was reading up on like monetization partnership on Twitch, and they were saying it's not very fair for smaller streamers. They like take 50% of a cut rather than like 30% or something like that. So I don't even know if I'll stay on YouTube. Oh, not YouTube, stay on Twitch. So your eyebrows, your eye when it's on turned like this, 3/4, the eyeball actually pokes out and you have your eyelashes. Okay, so 3/4 typically you see is like this, where you see a little bit of that under eye. Let me lay a good layer for you. Typically 3/4, you're gonna see it sort of like this, your eyebrow. But if your face is turned a lot more, this section of your eye pops out more. So you're gonna end up getting that eyelid right here. This is where your eyelid is. Your eyelashes poking out. And then your eyeball. And then your under eyelid. And typically sort of looks something like that. Or whatnot. Like, I like to think about it when I'm drawing eyes as two clams or two lips, however you wish to think about it. Clams, eyelashes, and then your eyeball's like right there. And then back to that. So when you're drawing it like this, you simplify. The nose is going to stick out more. Make sure you give yourself all those guidelines when you're drawing it, especially if you're like new. You need these guidelines. It will help you a lot more for your eyes to measure from those guidelines rather than trying to measure just out of like nowhere, right? Okay, so paint that over. And since that eye is in the light, you actually end up with like such like a white pupil kind of thing. Right? Yeah, it's so pretty. It's so warm. Like, good God. I know people have talked about like my color theory is on point, but I will be honest, my color theory is pretty trash. Hence why I have to like practice it a lot more. Like, I can identify the color and I can do color relationships, but if you ask me to like choose good color palettes, that's something I have to work on. We work on what we work on every day. Okay, so I'm just going to going to cover this up? What even is color theory? Good ass question. I cannot give you a good answer. Color theory is whatever you make of it. It's that beast that sits under your bed waiting for you to come up with a good image in your head, and then it smacks you down. It's like, psych, you thought you had the skills to do it. All right, so the eye is on an angle, so gotta make sure it sits on that angle, and it's also going to show this inner corner part of your eye. Okay, your eyeballs are round. But I do love that you have this like really nice green and stuff. So, and then you can break up that nose. Delete. Push it slightly to your res, up that saturation. But we gotta make sure we have nostrils, because we all have nostrils, no matter how much we don't like how it looks in our paintings. I used to like really not like adamantly force myself not to draw nostrils, just because I hated how like it added that extra like darkness on the face. But I've come to slowly embrace the nose. I think it's like a waxing phase. Like as artists, we're like, do I draw the nose or do I not? That is the question. Whether it is nobler of the soul or the mind. Something of Hamlet or Macbeth. I don't remember. High school was so long ago. And then I will put in some lip color. My donos, I swear, I thought it had, oh, the ambient music. Okay. Let me go bust that desktop audio. I promise I'm a professional. You know, I swear, I thought I had my donos open, but maybe I just don't understand how to stream it. Oh, let me see. Because I know for sure that since I'm not I don't have like enough followers or whatnot, I can't have subs, but I was pretty sure I had my dono opens. So, oh my god, you know what? I also am. I am okay. I promise I'm a professional. Desktop audio. Where's my audio? Cancel. Oh my god. Properties, default. Speakers. All right, quick restart of the stream so I can get this stupid audio. Hold on. Stay. Keep your pants on. I will be back real hot second. Don't leave.